Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here coming at you with another trail tip. I'm sorry it's been so long since I've got a video out, but you know, work comes first. I got to pay the bills. I was out last summer on a camping trip just overnight, and I wanted to do a little sewing project, and I keep my travel sewing kit in one of these. This is a 35mm film can, and I use one of these to keep my camping sewing kit in. My backpack sewing kit is a different kit, and I keep that separate. And as I was doing this, a neighbor came over and was talking to me, and she saw this little container, and she asked me where I got the little Rubbermaid container, and I says, that's not Rubbermaid, that's Tupperware. In all seriousness, these are 35mm film cans, and for those of you who are uninitiated, this is 35mm film. This is what we used to take pictures with before digital film, and most companies that supplied 35mm film supplied them in these little canisters, and usually you sent them in those canisters and you never saw the canisters again. So there's, you know, probably millions of tons of these things sitting in the landfills. To make things a little greener, I thought I'd do a video on some of the things that we can use these things for besides film. Now, I'm not going to suggest anything about food. The reason being, Kodak has been asked several times if these are food safe. Their official position is they know of no leaching or outgassing issues with their containers. Two problems with that statement. Number one, they are testing it for film, not food. So their results are strictly for film. They have no empirical evidence of whether these are safe for food. So as tempting as it is to put food in here, like a salt shaker or a single serving of some sort of condiment for your hot dog, like hot relish or pickles or onions or something like that, I am not going to suggest that you put food in these in any way, shape, or form. The other problem is Kodak is not the only one that makes it. This is a traditional Kodak container. It's black with a gray cap. You can also find some that are a kind of a milky white with the same gray cap, milky white with a reasonably clear cap, and then you can get black ones with a black cap too. So there are several different styles, plus you don't know who makes them. So even though this may be a Kodak container and it says HDPE on there, you never know if it's safe for food. So given the fact that Kodak doesn't test for food, and Kodak is not the only company that makes these, Fuji, Ilford, a lot of different companies can make them, and anybody can make these. As long as you have the financial ability, you can crank these out. So there is no way to say that these are safe for food. For food and medication, I'm going to suggest either for food, you can get an actual Nalgene bottle. These aren't all that expensive. For medication, for loose pills, you'd be better off to just leave them into the original container. Medication that's in punch cards like this will probably be okay because they're protected inside these little punch card type things. And I'm also not going to suggest anything about live ammo because you don't want to put ammo in a container and have it rattle around. That's a bad idea. So I would not suggest you put ammo in one of these either, no matter what the reason. So what are some of the ways that we can recycle these? Well, first off, you have to get a hold of them. You can get these, and I get all these all the time down at my local camera store. They still develop film in-house, and so I go in and they just have, you know, a great big box of these things, and you can take as many as you want. And people use these for craft items and things like that. I've seen people, all sorts of artsy, crafty things with them, and that's what they get them for. But I use them for backpacking, camping, prepping, hiking, that type of thing. So let's go through some of the things that we can actually use these things for. And if you can't get a hold of them at a local store, you can order them online. They're not all that expensive. Just remember, no food, no ammo, no medication. So let's get started. All right, if you've got a child that's got a loose tooth, put it in there and put it under the pillow for the tooth fairy. And put a C battery into one of these. Or an 18500. A 9-volt battery will fit into one. Also, this is a CR123A battery. A lot of photographers use these. I don't think you're going to get 2 in there, but you can get 1 in there. 5 AAA batteries will fit into a standard 35mm film can. A couple of AA batteries. Extra diodes for your solar power system. I had to bend the leads over to get them to fit, but they fit in there. Here's my sewing kit. I have needles and pins in this, and if I need to, I just cut it open, and when I get home, I seal it back up. But this is my travel sewing kit. Paper clips. Pair of medical gloves. Miscellaneous hardware. Like to go to the range? How about having an extra pair of ear protection? USB devices. Here's a little 12-volt charger that I can fit into a 35mm film can. If I can't find my regular 12-volt charger, I go to this. Paracord. USB drives, small USB drives, or some spare memory cards. A fishing kit, lures and hooks and sinkers and things like that. And if you're wondering why there isn't a bobber in here, is because the container is a bobber. To make one of those, simply take your fishing line and tie a square knot in the middle of it. Tie a square knot in the middle of it with a loop, and then simply put the loop over the top of the container. Close the container. And now that will become, make sure it's closed, and there is your bobber. And your fishing line has that knot in it, and it will take the tension of anything that you catch. Now, this is not watertight. It eventually will get water in it, but it takes several hours to even get just a smallest drop in there. So this is a very easy way to make an impromptu fishing bobber. Automotive fuses. Either these or the cylindrical types. These are the ones I use for my, I have spares for different sizes. I also use these for my inverter in my solar system for backup power. Spare change. You can get $3 or $4 in nickels, dimes, and quarters into one of these. Take one and put some talc in it, or baby powder, and some chili powder, and you've got an impromptu pepper spray. Just if you have the ability to dump this in an attacker's face, it's going to give you a few seconds to which they're going to have to deal with that, and you can hopefully escape. Safety pins. You can put all sorts of safety pins in one of these. Makes a great backup plan. The little button tablets. These are, I did a video on these here last year. You just drop these in water and you've got a little washcloth or a little towel. I'll put a link to those in the description below. And if nothing else, like I say, these are not watertight, but maybe in an emergency, you can make a message in a bottle. Throw that in the river or the lake or the ocean or whatever. You have to cut them down, but you can fit a lot of matches in there. I simply take a pair of wire cutters and cut the ends off, and then I can, I don't know, there's probably 30, 40 in there, but ordinary kitchen matches. Some more tinder. Makeup pads. I use these for tinder. More tinder. These are just dried leaves. Make sure you put them away where they're dry. Here is some cotton balls that have been soaked in some wax. More fire starter. Char cloth. Good way to keep it protected and not get it tore up or get wet. More tinder. A couple of cotton balls. Okay. What are some of the other uses that I'm not going to show you actually specifically? If you can get a hold of, let's say, 16 of the white ones and 16 of the black ones, you can draw out a checkerboard in the dirt or the sand and play checkers. Another thing you can do is if you have a cat, just throw one on the ground. Maybe the cat will play with it. If not, put a little pebble in there. Maybe that'll get the cat's attention. Or a little jingle ball. You can also make a geocaching container out of it. I have one of these in my trailer for holding wheel bearing grease. I just take some wheel bearing grease and pack in there, so if I ever have to grease my wheels when I'm out there in the middle of nowhere, I can have access to enough grease to do that job. Powdered laundry detergent. If you're a smoker, maybe you can save the economy and keep the ground clean and put your cigarette butts out in them after you've used your cigarette. Just make sure that it's out completely because you don't want that to burn. Something else is if you find a tick on you or you've been bitten by a spider and you can get a hold of that tick or spider, you can put it in here and have it taken to a lab to have it checked out to see if you have any problems you need to look for. Something else you can do is if you like to play games with dice and you've lost your Rickers, you've got a Rickers for your dice. These things are not completely waterproof. However, if you want to put some sort of topical solution like sunscreen or liquid soap, hand sanitizer, aloe vera, you can put them in these things. Just make sure that when they're transported, they remain upright because you don't want them to fall over and after a while they start leaking. These, like I say, these things are not watertight. However, one of my favorite uses for one of these is the simple white one. When I'm in camp, I take my flashlight, I turn it on, stand it up on end, and just put this on here. And I've got a great lantern to light up my campsite with. And of course, I can always adjust my flashlight to different light settings to do that with. So this is Backpack Hack coming at you with this trail tip. This is not an exclusive list of everything you can do with these things. I'm sure there's a lot of other ideas out there. So if you got an idea, put it in the comments below. And be safe out there, and I'll see you out there on the trail.